Courage is not a lack of fear. It's being scared to death but saddling up anyway. Welcome to McBain Moments. Alright, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Please take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. I promise my voice doesn't break very often. So, those words by John Wayne, and I don't remember what movie of his they were from, but they're pretty immortal. It's to remind you that in times of uncertainty, like the times we're in right now, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to not be okay. Because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Things are changing quickly. There are lines we've had to cross that we've never crossed before, or at least not since World War II. There are situations we've had to deal with that are unprecedented. We're dealing with something invisible, and that's frightening. So it's okay to be afraid, but it's not okay to let that fear rule us. See, fear is a natural thing to have. It protects us. It keeps us from doing stupid things. It's what made it so that we would survive predators back when we were not only predators but prey. That's why we're afraid of snakes. That's why we're afraid of big cats. That fear kept us alive, because I don't know if you've noticed, but big snakes can coil themselves around us, and big cats are, well, have you seen their paws? Those paws have claws attached to them. So, what can we do to overcome that fear? Well, that's individual to each of us. We all have our methods of dealing with it. We all have our coping mechanisms. The important thing is that we don't let the fear rule us. We can't let it overpower our inner being. There's going to come a time, whether it's with this incident or anyone in the future, where you want to let the fear rule you. Now, for most of us, that generally happens in something much more mundane. A job interview, or dealing with someone you don't like, or running into an ex. No, those are fairly mundane. They happen a lot. Not necessarily to any individual, but across the span of all individuals, they happen a lot. These are normal levels of fear. But the fear we're feeling now is more existential, because it's not tangible. We can't touch it. We can't see it. And so, and maybe that's why the zombie plague was such a big thing back in the 90s, because it turned something invisible visible, and it was easy to grasp. And you could do something about it. Dealing with zombies is easy. Dealing with this is not. So what do you do about it? You have to look yourself in the mirror and admit the fear. The next thing you have to do is remind yourself that if you take the measures necessary to overcome the virus, the worst fears you have will likely not materialize. Now, I say likely. There's always a chance. You know, there's no perfect protection. We don't have, energy shields like in Star Trek, or, Asuna spells like in Final Fantasy. Bad things are going to happen. But if we allow fear to rule us, then we're going to try to bubble ourselves, and we're not going to live our lives. Now, does that mean that we don't have to take certain precautions and alter our patterns of behavior during individual crises? Of course we do, because that's the smart thing to do. But when it's over, you have to be prepared to hit the ground running and not be afraid. These things take time, and overcoming fear is learned. Fear is natural. ignoring fear or overcoming fear. You should never ignore your fears. You should figure out when your fears are valid or when the natural fear is due to something that is no longer a problem. Or when it's your fear reaction is more than warranted for that individual situation. And that's very, very common. No one should ever feel bad about that happening. That's extremely common for the fear reaction to be much higher than it needs to be for a given situation. So you need to look at the situation, decide if the fear reaction level is warranted for what you have, and say, okay, why am I feeling this level of anxiety over this individual issue? Okay, now it's time to overcome it. And then you got to figure out how to overcome it. And sometimes that means talking it out with someone, processing it. Sometimes that it means exposing yourself to it. Exposure therapy is extremely powerful. That does not mean doing something stupid like, leaning over the edge of a cliff while you're held onto by cup hooks or something dumb like that. Now that I've suggested it, someone's going to do it. Please don't do that. But it does mean being willing to experience things that you're afraid of, as long as they can be done so reasonably safely. And as for the situation we're in now, this too shall pass. It will take time. There's going to be a lot of things that happen along the way. And there's going to be a loss. But we will overcome. And so will you. This has been a McBain moment.